Okay, so we have seen some shape commands and we have learnt a little bit about the sketch environment as well. So now let's put these two things together and apply it to something jewelry related. So we're going to create a new file. We're going to use a generic template. Let's name it. Okay. So we're in our 3D environment. The first thing I'm going to do is insert a sketch by right-clicking, navigating to Insert Sketch. Alternatively, I can come up into the drop-down menu, Insert, Insert Sketch. I'm going to place it on the front datum, and I'm going to make sure that my centroid is defined by the plane. Okay. Now I'm going to insert a line. I'm using a 2-point line. Now we left click to select the first point, and I want it right at the center here, at the origin. So I'm looking for it to come and snap in to the origin. Okay, we can see it snapped to the origin when there is this small yellow circle in here. Okay, so we can see it snap to the origin like that. So left click, and now I want this to be a vertical line. So here it is. It's snapping to a vertical constraint. Left click, confirm, and you can see that we here have our vertical constraint that is coming automatically. We can add this manually in our constraint ribbon panel. Navigate to vertical constraint. Okay, so this line is constrained vertically and to the center point. So when we try to move it, we are only able to change the length of it. And now I want to dimension this to give this a set length. So we can add our constraints again, coming into the constraint ribbon panel. We use the quick dimension command. We can right click, second from the left on the top, quick dimension, pick our line, drag out our dimension. We can place it anywhere, doesn't matter, but obviously we want it somewhere that it is easily viewable. Okay, we can now change our value. I'm going to set it at 8 millimeters. Okay. You'll see that the input manager for quick dimension pops up again, even though we have confirmed our initial dimension. This allows us to put in multiple dimensions one after another. So I'm just going to cancel it now. We can change the dimension of our line by right-clicking our dimension, navigating to the first icon on the left, modify value, and then we can modify from here. I'll leave it at 8. Now I'm going to exit into my 3D environment, and here we have the sketch. Okay, so the purpose of this sketch is to allow me to place a datum up here at the top. So I'm going to place a datum by right-clicking, insert datum. In the same way I can use the insert drop-down menu panel, insert datum. Okay, and here is the datum input manager. Okay, we'll be getting more familiar with this as we progress. We have several different options to define our datum. For now I'm going to stick with the plain option. Okay. Our geometry, I want to snap the datum, i.e. place it at the top of this line. So I'm going to hover my cursor near the top, and using our snapping tools, it should automatically snap to the top there. Okay. Now left click. I can then give it an offset value. In this case I want the offset to be 0. Type 0. enter. We also have a few more input fields. Okay, I'm going to leave these blank. However, I'm going to make changes to my X and Y angle. This is because I'm going to be using this datum to bring in a new sketch. And when we place a sketch on a datum, it will orientate our sketch in relation to the Y and X axis of that datum. In all cases, it will orient the sketch with the Y facing vertically upwards and the X facing horizontally to the right. Okay, it's hard to visualize here. Okay, so this is the plane that our sketch will be brought onto. Now I want my sketch to have the orientation of a side plane, this red plane. So I must change the angles of my coordinate system so it aligns with the side datum. So I'm going to do this first of all by changing my X angle. Now using the scroll, let's see what happens when we change the X angle. We see that the datum rotates around the X direction. So first of all I want it pointing vertically like this. Okay. We can now change the Y angle and see the datum rotate around the Y direction. Okay. So now this is actually turned red here to show that it is the side datum. This is now aligned with our side datum. And I can confirm the operation. I should point out quickly that we are able to change our datum format. For example, if we do not want this square box around it, we can turn it off by just showing the X-Y axis. Okay, this can help clean up our working environment. So let's confirm the operation. And we have our datum up here. Now I'm going to show my dimensions by using this icon here. And when I modify the length of this line, right clicking, modify value. So let's say I want to put it at a value of 10. When I confirm the operation, you'll see that our datum moves to stay on the top of the line where we placed it. So I'm going to give it a value of 8 again. Right, and now I'm going to insert a sketch on this datum. Insert sketch by right clicking, select the plane, make sure that the centroid defined by plane is ticked, confirm the operation, and you see that we are brought into the plane with our Y pointing vertically up and our X horizontally to the right. Okay, so we're in our 2D sketching environment, and you see that when I hover my cursor over this previously created sketch, okay, it's hidden a bit by the dimension, it will not highlight, it will not be selectable. We can hide it by using the show target command. Okay, but how about we want to be able to use this as a reference point in our new sketch? Well, we can do this by right clicking and navigating to the icon at the top, first on the right, reference geometry. If we left click on here, it brings up the input manager. We have different options available. For now I'm just going to stick with this first one, the curve reference. And now you'll see I can select the curve or the sketch that we created previously. If we left click, it will input a red dashed line. Here we exit this now. And then when we come to show target again, the 3D environment is hidden, but we now have our reference from that environment, and it stays in our 2D environment. So let's go into the plane view, scroll out a bit, and now I'm going to insert a line. 2-point line. I'm going to place it anywhere in our space, confirm the operation. And now I'm going to use my constraint commands to constrain it to this center point. Okay, so first of all I want to make it a horizontal line. You can see we have our horizontal constraint here. Next I want to constrain the middle of this line to be at the center point. So we use a point to midpoint constraint. Okay, if you can't see that, you can click in our drop down menu, point to midpoint. We select our first point, our second point, the two endpoints of the line, and then we select our midpoint, letting our snap tools do the work. You will notice the snap has occurred because a yellow circle will appear about that point. So left click, and our line is snapped to the origin here. Okay, so if we try to move it, again we can't, it's only the dimension. Okay, so now I want to give this line a dimension. Right click, quick dimension, left click the line, left click again, and I'm going to give this a value of 4. Okay. Let's see what happens when I modify my value by right clicking, modify value. Okay, you can scroll up and down, and you can see that it is keeping the midpoint of the line constrained to the origin. Okay, so let's bring in 2 more lines. I'm going to move my dimension first by dragging and dropping it into a more convenient location. Okay, this has no effect on the geometry of the sketch. Okay, so a new line. Now I'm going to use my snap constraints to help me out. Snap my first point to the end point of our initial line. Left click. Going to place my second point with a vertical constraint. See our vertical constraint here. And then middle click to bring up the line command again. This one I'm going to snap again to this endpoint, and I'm going to drag the cursor up until I get this snap constraint, so that it is the same length as the last line that we drew, and it also has a vertical constraint. So left click, confirm, there we go. Now I'm going to dimension this line, right clicking, quick dimension, left click the line, drag out our dimension. I'm going to give it a value of 1. Now since this line that we drew is constrained to be the same length as this line, when we make the changes to the dimension of this line, it should update this one as well. So let's set it to 1. Okay, and there we go. Finally, I'm going to bring in an arc. I'm going to place the first point at the end of this line. I'll constrain the second point to the end of this line. Okay, and then I'm going to use my constraint to constrain it to be a semicircle, a half circle. Left click, confirm. Now when we bring in an arc, we will automatically get a dimension thrown in for the radius of the arc. Okay, the distance from the center point of the arc to the outside. Now you can see that this dimension is in parentheses or brackets. Okay, and what this means is that our sketch is effectively over-constrained, so we cannot change the dimension or modify the value of this dimension by right-clicking Modify, because we have constraints that will not allow us to change it. In this case, it is this constraint here, which is actually a tangency constraint between this line and the start of this arc. Okay, so you can see we have no option to modify the value like we do for this dimension. And when we do modify this dimension, our arc, the radius of our arc, will change. Okay, so as you begin playing around within the software, you may encounter this over-constrained sketch situation quite often, and we will be working through examples of this in due course. But for now, I'm just making you aware of what this means, the parentheses. So I'm happy with this sketch. I'm going to exit out into my 3D environment. And here we have our two sketches. When I change the value of this dimension, you should see it all updating. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to revolve this sketch like we did in the last part of lesson 2. Okay, using our revolve command, the shape ribbon tab. I'm going to revolve it to create a ring shank, and this sketch will be what we refer to as a ring shank sketch. So I pick my profile as this sketch, make sure that the entity filter is set to sketch. I will then pick my axis, which will be the y-axis, the axis with which we are revolving our sketch around. Okay, so my start angle is 0, which is here. And then it revolves around to 360 degrees, which will be my end angle. So 0 to 360. I'm going to bring it in as a base. I have no other option actually. And then I'm going to come into my settings, and you can see we can have the option here to add both end caps, start, end cap, or no end caps. So I'll show you what this does by actually changing my starting point to this angle. If we set this to no end caps, you see that the end of our ring shank is left open, both ends. I can redefine last, set this to both end caps, middle click to confirm. Now you see we have our end caps. Right click, redefine last. I'm going to change the end angle back to 360 to get one complete revolution. Okay, now when we have one complete revolution, it is important to set this to no end caps, because we do not want additional surfaces, faces, inside of our shape. Okay, and I'm going to keep my profile, the profile being the ring shank sketch that we created. If I do not tick this box, the command will automatically erase that sketch. But in this case I want to keep it because I would like to use it again. So we confirm the operation. Here is our ring shank. It is a shape. Okay. And then we have our original sketch, the ring shank sketch. Right, so now I'm going to modify the dimension. Change our entity filter onto dimension. Incidentally, I should let you know a shortcut to bringing up the entity filter, and that is to hold down the shift key and right click on your mouse. Okay, this is a shortcut to our entity filter. Let's navigate to dimension, right click our dimension, modify value, and let's kick it up to a 10 millimeters. Confirm the operation, and our ring updates to a radius of 10 millimeters. Okay, so that's a total diameter of 20 millimeters. Okay, now working in CAD software, it is often easy to get lost within the scale of things. Okay, so what we're looking at, maybe about 25mm in total, from top to bottom. This is just 1 inch. Okay, so we're working on a very small scale. And this is something that we need to get used to, because when we start making changes as small as maybe 1/100th of a millimeter, or even 1/10th of a millimeter, these values are really quite insignificant at the manufacturing stage. Okay, 1/10th of a millimeter is a very small amount of material. Okay, so the scale of our designs is something that we should always bear in mind. Let me return this to an 8. And now I'm going to modify the values of my sketch. Come into the dimensions on and off again to bring up my new dimensions. Okay, now we can't see them very clearly here. We could move to a wireframe mode. In this case, I'm going to show my hidden lines because I want to see the ring, the shaded ring, as we update it. So let's change this sidewall height. Right click, modify value, give it a 0.5. Okay. You can see it has updated the ring to this dimension. Let's make it narrower. 2.5. Okay, and here we go. This is where our sketching comes in handy, because we can make modifications to the dimensions like this, and also within the history, to update our rings to these modifications without having to restart everything from scratch. Okay, let's save this. File, save as, save. And now I'm going to create a new file. Up here, add new file. This time I'm going to use one of our templates. Okay. I'm going to use a basic closed solitaire. This template for a ring. Okay. Let's name it. Okay. We are brought into our new file, and here is our template. Okay, so this will help us with our ring designing. Now I'm going to create a ring shank like before with a sketch. However, I'm going to be using a tool in our Design Sketches and Ring tab. So previously I manually created the ring shank sketch, but you'll see here in the ring wizard we have a selection of pre-made ring shank sketches templates. Okay, so left click, and this will bring up a carousel of all of our pre-made sketches. And there's many to choose from. Yeah, I'm going to pick this one. We select it by left clicking, then we move our cursor to the point at which we would like to bring in our sketch. So I'm going to bring it in on this datum here, this already placed datum within the template. Left click, okay, confirm the operation, and here we have our pre-made ring shank sketch, much easier. I can now do my revolve. About the y-axis, 0 to 360, base, no end caps, and I'm not going to keep the profile this time. Okay, so here's our ring. Okay, now instead of using the revolve, we may also use a sweep. Okay, so let's undo this revolve. I'm going to open up my history manager so we can see what's going on here. A sweep, if we left click, allows us to pick a profile, then a path with which we would like to sweep our profile along. So I'm going to use the pre-made ring template path here. So I'll pick it at this point. Okay, now you see this has the same effect as a revolve. However, we have specified the path for our sketch to be swept along, which means that our path does not necessarily have to be circular. Okay, with the revolve tool, we are limited to a circular shank. Okay, so the usefulness in this case with our template is the fact that our template is automatically linked up to another command we have in the Design Sketches Ring tab, the ring size. Okay, we can set the ring size. We have access to the conventional ring sizes for the US or other countries. Okay, so let's set our ring size to a 9. Apply, and our ring updates to the size. Okay, so let's save our work. Now I'm going to create a cylinder. Okay, so we've seen how to do this in the early part of this lesson. Select our cylinder. We're going to pick this datum to snap to as our center point. You see it snaps in, and we have the yellow circle around the point to show that it is snapped in. I can now drag out my radius and my length. Let's give it a radius of 1.2. Okay, I'm going to add it as a base and confirm the operation. Okay, so now let's use our pattern tool, the array. Okay, so come into the pattern tool. We are using the circular pattern or array. Our base will be our cylinder. Make sure that the entity filter is set to shape. Our direction, the y-axis again. Again, you can see we're starting to get our array. This time, I'm going to use this option, derived pattern. I'm going to derive the spacing. Okay, so this will space out our shapes an equal distance. Okay. Now we can increase our number. Set it to 25. And I'm going to Boolean add them to our ring shank. Confirm the operation. Okay. And you can see that this is now one complete shape minus our original cylinder. So we can combine, add this. Using our combine command, select our base, our operator, we want to add them, confirm, and we now have one complete shape. Okay, so I want to make a modification in history now to my cylinder. Before I pattern it, let's drag the model stop up to after our cylinder. I'd like to move it down slightly. I'm thinking it is a bit too prominent. So select move. Alternatively, we right click on our shape, move. I'm going to drag it down a little bit. Confirm. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a fillet tool, a fillet command in our shape ribbon tab. So this is what the fillet does. You can see it creates a smoother edge on our corners. So left click. Okay, we'll be using this fairly often. Select our edges that we want to fillet. Okay, you can see the preview here. You can change the magnitude of the fillet, or in this case it's the radius of the fillet. Okay, there's many options in here. I'm not going to cover them now. Confirm the operation. Now let's replay the rest of history. The pattern is replayed, and so is our combine add. So here we have our shape. Let's save. Okay, let's change the face color of our ring. Left click, go into face color. Okay, and now we can blank out our shape by right clicking, blank. Okay, or using our blank commands up here. And then we can swap our entity visibility, and now we see just our ring, less all of the datums and the ring template. It tidies up our view a bit. Okay, so something I'll be showing you further along the line is in our export and rendering tab, our live render. It allows us to quickly visualize our work.